Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host, Jacob Billington, joined as per usual by my fantastic co hosts, Paul Quinney and Dayton Reimer. I'm very happy to see you guys here again. We're recording just after the Senators Carolina Hurricanes game. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But first of all, how you doing, Paul?
Oh, really good, Jacob. No complaints. I probably should have been watching the latest episode of Downton Abbey instead of watching that game. But other than that, you know, it was okay.
They still
Okay.
making Downton Abbey?
I think there's a second version of it, but look, I'm not going to actually admit that I watched Downton Abbey. I'm just, that game was that bad that it made Downton Abbey look good. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough. How you doing tonight, Dayton?
Oh, tired, ready for Christmas. Same old.
Tis the season.
It's the
I'm very
season.
excited, and I've got a toddler here at home, so it's going to be a fantastic. It's going to be his first Christmas that he really knows what's going on. He
Hold up
just
a
turned
second.
3, so should be a good time. Um, Before we get into the actual game, I just wanted to remind everybody that all of our Substacks are now in one place. So if you want to subscribe to any amount of teams, head over to the Substack. There's going to be a link in the description to the Ottawa Senators one, but feel free to subscribe to some other Substacks for some other teams. And if you have a paid subscription, you can also look at some other teams that are in there and you get all the best content available to you. So make sure to go check that out in the description. So that was quite the game that we just talked about. Obviously, Paul would rather be watching Downton Abbey. Dayton is also going to go check in on the latest episodes of Downton Abbey. And honestly, right now we're missing out on the Connor versus Connor. That should be a very exciting game. You get to see Edmonton and Chicago face off, and Connor Brown and Connor Murphy. Everybody's been waiting to see that game, so should be pretty exciting. But yeah, let's talk about the Senators and Hurricanes. It was 4-1 loss. I have a couple things I want to mention. One really big thing, but we'll just start with you guys. Dayton, what are your takeaways from that game?
Is this not the Senators team that we have kind of come to know? They
Yeah,
start out strong and then completely fall apart in the second period.
yeah,
Uh, Two back-to-back power play goals allowed. Looking at the advanced stats, everyone looks pretty decent. No major standouts of like guys who are really not pulling their weight.
yeah,
But yeah, just a complete collapse in that second period.
yeah, absolutely, and that's what really bit them. And when's the last time this team scored a power play goal?
Mm.
It's been a while. I think this was game number 6 without one, if I'm not mistaken. I could be very wrong. Um, I'm just looking. No, they scored one against the Maple Leafs. I don't know. They have not scored very many power play goals. They did not score one against the Maple Leafs. I don't know. It's been a while. I think they're 0 for their last 18 is the stat that I saw. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what I saw.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Second period was a disaster. I think the latest stat I saw, and actually I wrote an article at the Senators Christmas wish list, and on that list was a wish that the NHL eliminate the second period, maybe move games to quarters or halves.
Did see that.
Um, yeah, I don't know if the NHL is going to go for that, but uh, after Detroit, yeah, that's right. They had let in 35 goals in the second period, and in the first and third, it was half that, something like 17 and 18. So it's just I don't know what happens in the second period, but I don't know. I hope Santa Claus grants them their wish and eliminates second periods. It's the only hope they've got.
Well, and it's so frustrating because they come out of the gate so hot most nights. Like they usually come out the first 3-4 minutes and dominate, and they usually come out of the first period with a lead, and they sit on it and they can't do anything about it. Now there's a stat. I believe the Senators are 8-0-0 headed into the third period with the lead.
Hmm.
Okay.
That's most of their wins. They do not have third period comebacks. So even though they might play fantastic, they don't win those games that they're losing in the third period
But
or
where
going into the third.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't get it. You know, they look pretty good in the first. They came out with what, 1-1. They looked sharp, and then they did their Jekyll and Hyde routine. I don't know where they go in the second period. It's just a completely different team. Doesn't look like they care. Nobody's fighting. Nobody's battling. You know, the Canes were just walking right downtown, unmolested, right through. Nobody got in their face in the crease. I don't know what happens to them. Tkachuk, you know, he fights. He's committed to the end, but Stützle, I guess. But they all go somewhere. I don't know what explains it.
Yeah, and it's almost like they've played. Sorry, go ahead, Dayton.
I was just gonna throw some fun stats at you. You guys, talking about power play goals. You want to take a guess how many power play goals the Senators have this season?
How many opportunities do they have?
They have 93 opportunities, which ranks 10th in the NHL. They've had the 10th most opportunities on the power play. How many got converted into goals?
I'm going to say 14.
Okay. Paul?
12.
You guys actually both undershot it. 17.
Okay. That's not good at all.
No, 20th in the league. But,
Yeah.
I mean, the Capitals have 6, so...
Yeesh.
When you compare it to that, it's like, it's not bad, but yeah, there's still a disappearing act happening in that second.
Which is insane because of, like, look at the talent on that top unit.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And how are they not producing? They couldn't even enter the zone tonight.
Nope. No.
It's terrible. And I did make one note in the last game against Detroit about the penalty kill and how much I absolutely love the new development that it's been going on and that they're so aggressive at the blue line. They were not that tonight. They were just sitting back, letting Carolina have a whole bunch of space. And I don't know.
The only thing good I can say about the second period, and Jamie McLennan pointed it out, Koshnikov, or however you pronounce the name, he did a Billy Ranford 2-pad stack. Yeah. So I hadn't thought of seeing that in years. So there you go. It was a plot. If you were paying attention, you saw that.
Kochekov had a fantastic game.
Yeah, he really did. And I guess, speaking of goaltenders, I mean, Korpisalo, the knock on him, I've said it from the get-go, is inconsistency. Yep. So has a great game against Detroit, and then tonight, I don't know, what was his save percentage? Down in the 800s, I guess. 4 goals on 20, how many shots? I don't know. Something terrible.
I think they had 31.
Did they?
Yeah. It was. I've got it up right in front of me here. No, I don't. Hang on. 857, 4 goals on 28 shots. That's not good.
Nope.
Now, I don't think he's the reason they lost by any means, but he didn't steal them the game, which is something that you hope that your goaltenders can do, which Ottawa's haven't been able to do really.
Yeah, you have to be able to steal a game, and Ottawa's goal. Well, they haven't been able to do it. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, at what point do we stop blaming the goalies? Because it's been every single goalie for the past 4 years?
Yeah.
I don't think that's the goalie's problem anymore, especially when we go see Talbot play amazing in Los Angeles.
Back up another year.
Play amazing in Minnesota. Murray, well, he was injured, so we'll skip him, but everyone else went on to play very, very well in their new systems.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it's the goalie's fault.
No, I don't either.
Dayton, we put the solution out there last week. Matt Sogard. Gotta call him up.
Yeah, and when he's been up there for, brief little times, he's looked really good. They leave him in for a longer period of time, he looks really shaky.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah.
I don't think it's his fault.
And it's also not the fault of Thomas Chabot being out of the lineup. I don't care if this lineup is Belleville's lineup on defense. I don't care if it is Cale Makar, Victor Hedman, Roman Josi, Quinn Hughes. I don't care if they're all on the roster. If they're playing under DJ Smith right now, the goalie's not going to look good, right? And that's the whole point we talked about last week with Jacques Martin coming back. Hopefully he can kind of instill some structure into this lineup, but I don't know.
No, it's bad here in Ottawa. The whole city's suffering from schizophrenia on a population scale size here. They win what? They beat New York,
6-2.
win a moral victory against the Leafs, win against Detroit, and people are saying, that's it, man. They're on a roll. Here we come. And then they mail in a stinker like tonight. And so tomorrow it'll be mass depression around the city, and people will take to drinking again.
Yeah. So I got one more question for you about this game. What did you think about Brady Tkachuk tonight? Either one of you, if either one of you have kind of any specific thoughts on him, what did you think of his game?
Well, I was just looking at the advanced stats, as I do. I'm that guy. And no one on the ice for Carolina or Ottawa had a higher expected goals for.
Okay. That's interesting.
It is. And he didn't score or get an assist. He had a 1.01 expected goals for. The next highest was Martin Necas on Carolina, 0.9. So he was apparently doing absolutely everything right. He should have scored.
Okay. Paul, what do you think of his game tonight?
Well, I can't quarrel with Tkachuk and his game and his commitment. But I would caution him if I were the coach, and I'm basing this story on what happened to his brother Matthew in Calgary, because he was slated to become the face of the Calgary Flames. He was going to be captain, and the knock on him was he eventually lost the room because every night was just crazy town. Right. Mm-hmm. So Jake Muzzin, it was a game against Toronto, flipped the puck at him at the end of the game. And he went absolutely berserk. And then he got really PO'd because the rest of the Flames weren't following him into battle.
Yep.
But at a team meeting, they said to him, look, Matthew, we love your fire and your passion, but every night can't be crazy town. This is so. I'm specifically with respect to Brady's performance tonight. He went bananas, went with that poke check, and then skates over to the Canes bench and challenges them, and then they put him out for some reason beyond me to understand, but they put him out. And then the ref said, that's it, you're out of here, guy. You're like 10 minutes. Even they recognized he was half out of his mind. Yeah. So I don't know that that's consistent with the captaincy, the leadership that's required. You need fire for sure, but it's got to be controlled, calculated application of the fire. I don't know that he's got that. Will he get it eventually when he matures? Maybe, but hey, he's not that young anymore, right? So that's just an observation with him.
So that call, that whole kind of situation was with 4 minutes and 21 seconds left. I got very, very frustrated watching him for the last, I think it was 13 and a half minutes in the game. He started just taking very, very late runs at other players. You saw him do it with Brent Burns, Stefan Nason. There were a couple other guys that he just completely took himself out of the play just to get that one little extra bump. And it was 4-1, not unreachable in 13 minutes, but you're close enough that you can't just give up on the game, but you're not close enough that that's not worth it at that point, right? And so I got very frustrated because he was taking himself completely out of the play and losing his man, losing the puck, not even playing hockey at that point. He's just trying to rub out the guy, give him an extra bump, whatever it is. And then the Kochetkov, I like that from Brady. Obviously, Kochetkov came way out, and he did trip him a little bit. He was in his right. He got the puck first. He's allowed to do that. But I like seeing that little fire from Tkachuk. But again, You can't you can't drag your team into that kind of stuff every night. We've been seeing that a lot from Ottawa. Ottawa lately. Um, I don't know. I have no problem with Brady Tkachuk. Like I don't see any issue. It was just tonight I got very frustrated watching that.
Yeah, and you wonder if Giroux's not taking him aside and saying, "Look, man, you
Yeah,
just got to dial that back. There's a time and a place for it, but it can't be all the time
yeah,
if you want to be the captain that you need to be."
exactly. All right, we're gonna move on from the Senators Hurricanes game and kind of hit the rewind button a little bit. Go back to the Senators Red Wings game. Now, there's a lot of things to take away from it. Ottawa won 5-1, and that was their eighth win of the last 10 meetings between the two teams. Um, I don't really know what happened to Dylan Larkin, if I'm going to be honest with you. So what happened is Matthew Joseph, there was a battle in front of the net. He got his hands up high and pushed Dylan Larkin. His stick did not make any contact with Larkin. He pushed him with two hands right on the back of the neck, pushed him forward into Parker Kelly, who was going for a cross check to the midsection. It wasn't going to be anything egregious or dangerous or malicious, whatever. Looks like Larkin fell forward into his fist, and it was almost like a punch to the face that knocked him out. I understand 2 minutes for roughing on both of them, really. Like, you just, when a guy's out cold like that on the ice, you got to give out some penalties. That's the human nature of the
At least
game.
one. Yeah.
And then David Perron, like, I understand why he thought it was Zub, and I understand that he's going to go stand up for his captain. But thank God that Zub is okay, because that could have easily ended his season, even derailed his entire career. Like, that was incredibly dangerous. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on the whole situation. Obviously, if you've been on Twitter for the past couple of days, you know that it's just a toxic pool of, I don't even know. Like, it's disgusting, the things that some people are saying. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on the whole situation. We'll start with you on this one, Dayton.
I have been on Twitter for the last few days, but I mean, it's always a toxic cesspool, so it didn't really differentiate. I watched the clip multiple times. Initially, I did not like how Joseph looked. It's like he targeted the head.
Yes, absolutely.
And that isn't anything you ever want to see. That's no matter if he wanted to hurt him or not, and it does look like he didn't want to hurt him, he still targeted the head. Now, when you target the head, it's going to make someone bend over, right?
Yeah.
You're pushing somebody from a very vulnerable spot, and they're going to want to protect that. That then pushes him into Parker Kelly, who's coming in to rough things up as he does.
Yep.
And the perfect storm happens where Larkin's head gets hit on two different points. I don't know how hard, right? It's always tough to say when you watch it in slow motion. Either it looks really, really bad or it doesn't look like anything at all. And he's out, right? He hits the ice and is either out when he hits or is out pretty soon after that. Who is it first? I think it's Zub starts trying to wave over the ref.
Yeah, he's the first one. So he fell, landed right behind Larkin, and that's when he's standing up.
Yeah,
as
Zub's trying to
turns
do the right
around,
thing.
He starts waving.
You see somebody on the ice, you try to stop the play, whether it's your team or not, right? This is now bigger than the game.
Yeah.
And I respect the Senators for doing that, right? Yeah. Joseph did something dumb, and he did seem to recognize that, but right, you move on, you play, you compete, and then Perron goes nuts, attacks Zub, which could have fractured his jaw. Like, that was a cross check to the chin.
Yeah.
And throws him to the ice. And you know what Joseph does? Goes over to Larkin and tries to call over the ref.
Yeah.
Like, I like that. That's good. And based on what the game's like, I don't know if Joseph should be suspension free, right? Like, Larkin got injured. We don't know how long he's going to be out. I hope he's back soon, but when someone goes unconscious on the ice, you're going to miss a game. Yeah.
I think as of right now, it's minimum a week.
Yeah.
Which is
Not
relatively
surprising
good
at
news.
all. Yeah. I would expect more.
Yeah.
Brain injuries are so finicky.
Yeah.
I think Joseph did the right thing. I still think there should be some repercussions for that. And I don't think that's a popular opinion.
Yeah.
But he targeted the head and someone got injured for it. He was the principal contact. To me, that's a 1 to 2 game suspension.
Yeah.
If someone gets injured on the play. Perron, deserved the 6, maybe even more. That was reckless. That was stupid. And if anyone's defending that, they are not watching the same thing.
Yeah.
I can
I'm
go
kind of
on,
with
but
you.
I don't think I should.
in the game, I don't think that what Joseph did is any more than a 2-minute penalty. That's 2 minutes for roughing. That's more than fine. But I also do completely think that if he got a 1-game suspension, that's justified. And it's more so the result of what happened, which they say isn't supposed to be a factor in a suspension, is the end result.
Yeah, but it is.
But it is. It absolutely is. And you cannot deny that. But in the rule book, in the suspension Department of Player Safety, they say the outcome of a situation is not what we base our decision off of, but it has to be. We are human. We cannot do anything but look at the whole situation.
And the Department of Player Safety always follows their own rules.
Don't even get me started on this. The whole weekend, like Gabranson, what he did, I think that he should be suspended just as long as Perron was for the way he jumped Cousins and like slammed his head into the ice and kept punching the back of his head. Like that was disgusting.
That's a Bertuzzi level of suspension.
Yeah, like it.
That's headhunting.
I don't get how he only got 1 game for that. But anyway,
really, that's it. I didn't see. That's stupid.
Yeah, Gabranson got 1 game for that. It was bad. But yeah, back to the Perron situation or Larkin, whatever you want to deem it as. Joseph did something wrong. I don't understand Kelly getting the penalty, but I also get that this guy's out cold on the ice. He got to do something extra. So I had no problem with how anything played out with that game. I would agree that if Joseph got a 1-game suspension, I'd be fine with that. 2 might be a little bit much, but 1 game would be fine by me. Paul, what do you think of the Perron suspension? Is 6 games too little, too much, just right? What do you think?
Well, I could have seen 10. I think the interesting thing is, well, we all expected it, but the NHLPA is appealing it, as most unions would. It's what they do. I'd be interested in being a fly on the wall in the room where his defense is being formulated. He'd probably need O.J. Simpson's lawyer, Johnny Cochran. Problem is, Johnny's dead, so I don't know who his defense counsel is going to be. How you could, I don't know what the defense would be. I mean, so I wasn't trying to hit him in the head. I don't know. It'll be interesting. But it was a leaping cross check to Zub with malice of forethought, intent to injure. Yeah. I think that the NHL, the head office in New York must hate seeing this stuff because it makes the game, it puts it on the same level as kind of roller derby, right? And I know in some markets you probably have to sell hockey that way, but this is not helping grow the game.
Right.
American mothers are looking at this and saying, my kid's not going into hockey. And you really need kids going into it to grow the sport. This is just, thuggery, intent to injure. And hockey is the one sport of which I'm aware, aside from UFC and boxing, where it's legal to hit a guy in the head.
Yeah.
Right? It's legal to hit a guy in the head. Yeah. And even when it is judged illegal and you're penalized, you're out for a couple of games. In what other sport in the world is hitting a guy in the head allowed? I can see it if it were an accident, but this was, he had to think about it and said, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to try and injure him. That's what he tried to do. It's bad for the sport. A lot of
But
other
don't give somebody your Bet99 password. Then you're missing half the season.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the image. What kind of image does the NHL want to project in new growth markets? I mean, that stuff isn't tolerated in Europe. It's
Right.
that's something right out of Slapshot. I
Well,
mean,
right, exactly. So, did either of you watch the actual video that the Department of Player Safety released on the suspension?
Haven't. No.
The funniest part about it. So, Paul, you talked about how there's no defense for that. There's nothing you can even fabricate that would justify it.
temporary insanity. I don't know. I mean,
Perron and the Red Wings had an argument that they tried to make. Any guesses?
he tripped.
Wouldn't even
The
fathom.
principal point of contact was not the head.
What was it? Do tell.
The shoulder. He hit him in the shoulder first, and then it guided the stick up to his head. It maybe caught the jersey on the way to the chin, and even the commentator of the video was like, "We disagree." It was just straight up. The Detroit Red Wings tried to argue that the shoulder was the principal point of contact. We don't agree with that. And that's all that was said about it. Like it was foolish. Do yourself a favor and go watch that video when we're done here.
Oh, okay. So it was an accident. Okay.
Yeah, he didn't mean to. And I always get a kick out of he explains everything that's going on and then he goes, "This is a cross check." Like, I don't know. I just always get a kick out of that, especially when it's something as extremely dangerous as that. Like, it's the same as cross checking a guy on the hip to get the body position. All right.
But it really was it was an assault. That's all it was. I mean,
100%.
and no one who laces up and plays the game consents to that level of violence. You consent to getting slammed into the boards, rubbed out on the boards, maybe slashed, but you do not consent to that. It's an assault.
Yeah. The NHL is consistently reminding us that they are years behind in any other sports league, especially when it comes to CTE and brain stuff, concussions, and taking care of their players. And this is another example, I think. For one of the articles I wrote a while ago, I looked at Brett Lindros, and I can't remember if I brought it up in this podcast before. We talk about a lot of stuff. But really, really quick, Brett Lindros is the younger brother of Eric Lindros. Eric, of course, Hall of Famer, was one of the best players of the mid to late 90s, and eventually had his career cut short by concussions.
Yeah.
There was some really nasty ones, and it pains me to say it as a New Jersey Devils fan growing up, but Stevens probably shouldn't have been throwing those elbows. Those were ugly and contributed to several players cutting their careers short, Lindros being one of them. He's become fairly outspoken about that. Now, where his younger brother falls in is he retired at the age of, I believe, 24 because of multiple concussions.
Yeah.
And has managed to make, a career outside of hockey, but he was supposed to be the next Lindros. He was going to be maybe not quite as good, but just as gritty and in your face, and would have been an incredible star in the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah.
And concussions took him out. Why don't we know about those guys and their struggles? Because the NHL doesn't want to talk about it.
Let's hide our sins.
Yeah. And that's all it is. This is another, like the Detroit Red Wings, he didn't hit his head. Yes, he did. He was going to try to hit him on the chin. And if you hit somebody on the chin, anyone who watches mixed martial arts or, some sort of contact sport knows that'll knock you out cold faster than anything. There are some pretty intense, like either nerves or something. I'm not a doctor. That will shake your head and knock you out. So it's just sad to see that people are always just focused on the wrong thing, especially the NHL. That's my soapbox moment.
But Dayton, you were mentioning Scott Stevens essentially ending Eric Lindros's career. I mean, after that hit, he never was the same. That was the end of it.
He wasn't. No.
It's a philosophy in the game. It's still tolerated. If I catch you with your head down, right, I can do anything I want to you. Hey, keep your head up. You got caught with your head down. But in what that doesn't entitle you to deliberately injure someone. That sort of ethos wouldn't be tolerated in other sports, but it is in hockey. And hey, guy had his head down. So that's not a license to do whatever you want to the guy. I think there is still a penalty, intent to injure, isn't it? I don't ever recall it being called anywhere, but yeah. Anyway.
Well, and it's like when is the league gonna man up and do something? Like take these headshots seriously. Why shouldn't Perron be suspended for 40 games? Like precedent, we all know that the Department of Player Safety does not follow precedent on anything. But like start setting an example. Suspend these guys 30 games, right? Like we look at the history, like Steve Montador. That's the perfect example. Obviously, it was really unfortunate. I believe his official cause of death was a heart attack, but the CTE that he was experiencing was absolutely insane. And I believe it was the same with Derek Bugard. He was 28 when he died, and his brain was just there was so much CTE signs and symptoms that it's insane the way that these players get their brains just get turned into mush by the time they're ready to retire, and if they're lucky to make it to retirement, like it's terrifying the things that happen to these players because the league won't protect them. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so where this discussion is leading, I'm not going to lead it there. Don Cherry would, but he would say, exactly right. That's why we need enforcers. They never elbowed Wayne Gretzky, and okay, so we settle violence with violence. I mean, you've got to find some way to extinguish it from the DNA of the game.
Yeah, but we're going to take a quick break here in a second. But before we do that, I have one final point that I want to make. And this is, I feel like we're going back half an hour in the show when this conversation started. But Paul, you talked about how the NHLPA is going to be refuting this suspension or arguing against it. What are they doing for Artem Zub? Like, I don't understand that at all. Right? So they're going and fighting for Perron to have a suspension lesson. What's that saying for another member of that union, Artem Zub? That really bothers me. Like, what? I don't even know what to say about it. It just really makes my skin crawl.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but that's a good point. I mean, hey, he pays his union dues as well, right?
Yep. Like, why are they not standing up for Zub and saying, let's start setting an example, give him 30 games, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know. And that's just an example. 6 games, by the way that the league is run, 6 games is, I think, a perfect number for this. Sure, it could be a couple more. Red Wings fans would think that Zub should be suspended for standing in the way. But yeah, I don't know. I think 6 games is a fair number, but why is the PA not standing up for Zub and saying, why isn't it more? That's my question.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? If I'm Zub's agent, maybe I'll ask that question and ask for a return of my union dues. I don't know what union dues are, but
probably a lot.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. All right. And before we get into the rest of this episode, I just wanted to remind everybody to go check out the Substack link down in the description. Make sure you're getting all of the best content available to you. There's lots of great stuff going on over there, so go check that out. Let's talk some prospects. Dayton, this is right up your alley. You kind of even requested this as a topic, but definitely some exciting stuff to talk about. So let's just kind of run through the teams. We'll start with Team Canada. All Ottawa's got for them right now is Jorian Donovan, for the World Juniors, I should add. All Ottawa's got planned for them this year is going to be Jorian Donovan. What are we thinking of him, his season so far, and What do you expect from him at the World Juniors, Dayton?
Yeah, so just to kind of preface, Canada has not released their final roster yet.
Yes.
Jorian Donovan's been named to the preliminary one that is practicing and playing against the U Sports teams. I think he has a pretty good shot at making a bottom pairing on Team Canada. There's a pretty solid top four that, off the top of my head, Denton Matejchuk, Maverick Lamoureux, Tristan Luneau, and I've forgotten the other guy, that are pretty much locked into the top four. Those guys are awesome and should bring a lot of like two-way game and high offense for Team Canada. Donovan will have some competition out for him, but his season so far in the OHL with Brampton, I believe.
Yeah.
Brampton.
Brantford. Yes.
There we go. Ontario naming all their towns the same. Got to be more original, like Saskatchewan. We don't have to get into that now. But yeah, no, his season has been incredible. He's had a real breakout. He's been just a really solid presence, two-way, high offense. He's like a big body. I think he's 6'2". He can be quite physical. Yeah, I think he would be a perfect bottom pairing guy. Now he'll have to compete against some other guys who are also very good bottom pairing guys.
Yeah.
So we'll see. The roster will be announced on Wednesday. So when is this podcast going out again?
Wednesday.
Okay. So we'll find out if he has actually made it, but I would put a little money at least on him making the team.
Yeah, I mean, like you got Denton Matejchuk and Maverick Lamoureux. They're locks for the team. Maybe you didn't. I just missed it, but I don't think you mentioned Owen Pickering. He's probably going to make the team.
Owen Pickering was not named.
Was he not?
He was not.
Wow.
Yes.
That's
big wow.
Yes. Okay. So I do like Jorian Donovan's odds a little bit more now. If I was making the team, I would probably have Pickering over Donovan. But
yeah, the one thing to watch out for is Kevin Krasinski.
Yes,
who
he's headed back.
Chicago, I believe, placed on a non-roster spot recently.
It was for family issues.
Okay.
So it was not just for World Juniors.
Okay. I didn't see the reason. I just saw the what had happened. And that might mean he's coming. So far they haven't committed to him joining the team or releasing him.
Yeah.
Just to keep an eye out. And if he makes it, that really decreases Donovan's chances.
Yeah. Paul, do you have anything you want to add? I don't know how much you look into the prospects, but Donovan's a pretty big name. So if there's anything you want to add here.
Yeah, no. So I actually did see him a few weeks ago. I went down to a 67s game and saw him, and he's absolutely dominant out there. Big lad. I've heard though that, and Dayton alluded to it, that he's not a lock to make the team. In fact, I think tonight during the intermission, Bruce Garriock said that he probably wouldn't make the team. I don't know if Bruce has got it right or not. But what's interesting for me is when I hear that speculation that he won't make the cut. My God, Canada must have a hell of a team. What's
on defense at least, yeah, for sure.
On defense, yeah. So a guy like that.
I'm really excited for this year's World Juniors. Even though there's not many Ottawa prospects, it's going to be a good year, I think.
So you don't want us to go out on a limb and make predictions this far out. You probably want to leave that for a later show.
We'll do that closer to the Boxing Day start for sure.
All right.
So we'll move on to Team Sweden here. A ton of fantastic forwards. You got Jonathan Lekari-Mäki, Noah Ostlund, Liam Ogren, who else? Philip Bystead, Oskar Pettersson. He is Ottawa prospect. Otto Stenberg, Felix Unger Sorum, I believe, Carolina Hurricanes prospect. A lot of great guys on Sweden on that forward group. Oskar Pettersson is pretty much a lock for that group. He is going to be a fantastic top six forward by the looks of things. Paul, any thoughts on him?
Yeah, well, thanks for the pronunciation of his name, Pettersson. I was going to call him Peterson, and then someone would say, "What do you mean, the piano player?" But I couldn't resist that. But no, he's no, I don't know Pettersson very well, but I noticed the Scandinavian flavor to the Senators. The prospects they do have in the WJC, and I guess it speaks to their scouting strength in that part of the world.
Yeah. And who is it? Jarkko Root, who is leading the European scouting staff. So
Makes
shout out to
sense.
him. Dayton, any thoughts on Pettersson?
Yeah, no, he should be a top six guy. He's one of the few returning members on that team.
Yep.
Just trying to see here. Or no, it is a pretty good core now that I have it in front of me of players who were on there last time.
Yeah, there's a
Lekkerimäki,
lot of second year guys.
yeah, Osland, Ogren, those guys are coming back.
Yeah.
Bysted, I think Bysted's back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a really good forward core, and Pettersson will be a significant member of that. Last year, he had 2 goals and 4 points in 7 games. Look for that to increase. I wouldn't be surprised if he hit maybe a point a game,
Yep.
Especially if Sweden is going to be a medal favorite. And playing in Sweden, I would expect them to be.
Well,
yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
In like league play, he's been playing mostly in the SHL, which is pretty good for a teenager. 21 games, 1 assist. So like pretty low numbers, but his ice time's been pretty decent. I was looking at that today. And playing in the J20 National League, so kind of like the well, it's a junior league, like what we have in Canada. 4 games, 4 goals, 5 points.
Yeah.
He's too good for that league. So it's yeah, he should be quite an impact player, and I'm excited to see what he does with with a bigger responsibility. Do you mind if I jump into the next Swede? Or did you want to say something first?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So Kevin Reidler, I hope I'm saying that right.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. I couldn't, if it was German, it would be Reidler, and I wasn't sure which way it leaned. Anyways, we'll go with Reidler. Kevin Reidler, playing in the USHL this year. His numbers aren't great. An .899 save percentage in 19 games, 12-4 record though. He's been putting on a big string of wins with the Dubuque Fighting Saints. I hope is it Dubuque or Dubuque?
Dubuque.
Okay.
Yeah. Now we're gonna have angry letters written in from the good burgers of Dubuque about
we'll cut that, right? Yeah.
our cultural sensitivity.
I think he has a chance of starting for the Swedes.
Really?
Yes. He is, well, he's 19 years old, 6'6", big kid. He's shown that he can be a high volume goalie. And his international stats haven't looked great so far.
Yep.
But if given the chance, and I think he could win the job in some pre-tournament play, he doesn't have heavy competition. Melker Thelen, who is a guy I've never heard of. He was drafted by the Coyotes. He's on the team as well as Hugo Havlid. He is back. So that'll be his biggest competition. Hugo has been pretty solid. Oh wait, no, he wasn't on the World Juniors before.
No, and he's undrafted too.
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken.
It was a different Havlid.
Yes, Matthias Havlid. He's a Sharks prospect.
That's what it was. So Hugo's been better in international play, and so he could win the starting job. I think Reidler is backup and could bail him out or steal the starting job. So that's another name to really keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I like the look of things for Team Sweden this year because Ottawa, obviously, they got 2 prospects on that team, hopefully, if all goes well. It's in Gothenburg, isn't it? The tournament will be in Gothenburg. Yeah. So I'm really excited to watch that. Team Sweden has, I think, the best defense in the entire tournament. They've got Elias Salomonsson, Jets prospect. He is fantastic. Axel Sandin Pellikka. Um, Producer Matthew might want to jump in and talk about these Canucks because they have Elias Pettersson, and they also have Tom Villander, and like I mentioned, Matthias Havlid, Cole Adilius. They have a ton of guys that could really make a push at this roster. I think that Team Sweden is my favorite. I don't know if odds have them as the favorite to win the tournament, but I think that they're my favorite to win the tournament.
Yeah, I think they have a good shot. They just have to get over that mental hump that has held them back for decades.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on to.
Well, I have a question for you two World Junior Championship gurus.
Go ahead.
Of the players that appear in that tournament,
Yeah.
how many would actually make it to the NHL?
A lot. I don't want to say most, but definitely a lot. I'd like to know the stat for that. Maybe I'll do some math this week and just over the past 5 years, how many have played in at least an NHL game?
Yeah. Well, I don't have a clue, but I thought I'd ask it anyway. A bit of trivia there.
It's a pretty good odds, I believe.
Is it?
It's the first time that a lot of these players are getting to see, or not getting to see, but scouts are getting to see them in a high competition level.
Well, I mean,
that was said terribly.
Well, while yes, you're right. I think Macklin Celebrini is going to be the only player on the Canadian roster that is not already drafted.
I would bet on that. Yeah.
And he's going to go first overall this year. He's having an unreal year. So yeah, these guys almost for Canada and US, they're all already drafted for the most part, or they're going to be top 5 picks. I can't think of anybody that's making a push at the US roster that would be undrafted right now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
there's a I know Cole Yzerman is not on the team.
Yeah.
They also, I don't think, have released their final roster.
Right.
Zeev Boyum?
Zeev Boom.
Boom.
Yeah. Brother of Shai Boom.
Yeah, Shai Boom. Great hockey names.
Fantastic names.
Yeah. He's been unreal this year, and I think probably gets a spot.
He could make a push.
Yeah, definitely makes a push anyways. The rest of the guys I'm not as familiar with who are undrafted. James Hagens, though, 17-year-old.
Yep.
Maybe doesn't make it, but that's a kid to watch out for the next couple of years.
Yep. Yeah, the majority of them are usually already drafted. Most of them do make it to at least, when I do the math this week, which I will, I'll do a 15-game threshold. Just because a lot of players play one game. Let's say 15 games. How many of them play 15?
Well, or even 100. So that's a little more than a season.
Yeah. And then the last player on Team Czechia will be Tomas Hamara. That was, I almost said it, very, very Canadian, Tomas Hamara. But yeah, he wasn't a lock to make the team at all. They just announced their roster. Was it today that they announced it?
Today or yesterday? Yeah, it was real recent.
Yeah. And he made it. He's going to be playing. Having not a very great year in the OHL. Former 4th round pick by the Senators. Paul, anything you want to add on Hamara?
No.
No. Dayton?
Yeah, I can talk about Hamara here for a second. So overall, yes, not great this year. And so there was some speculation that maybe he doesn't make the Czech team.
Yeah.
He had a real rough start with Kitchener. Just wasn't finding the chances. Hadn't scored a goal with Kitchener this year before he was traded to Brantford.
Yeah. And he only had 2 last year in 52 games or whatever it was.
Yeah. Just wasn't clicking with him. Now that he's in Brantford, however, in his first 9 games, he had 6 points, including his first goal of this.
Yeah.
So he's still a very good defender, and he was part of the silver medal winning team last year.
Yeah.
Yes. Getting all my years confused. But yeah, he's back. Will really stabilize that Czech defense.
Yeah.
And yeah, looks like he's getting his confidence back. Looked like he's getting his game back. And with that, I think the Czechs are once again a threat to pull some upsets here. They've got a really good team, but maybe not as well known as some of the other ones.
Yeah. They have a lot of underrated players, and they're definitely an underdog coming in, but I do like their odds.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple of really good goalies. Or at least Michael Rabel.
Yep.
Another like 6'6" guy who will be scary. Yuri Kulik, Edward Shala, Matthias Sapovalev. Those are all guys who will do damage at the tournament.
Yep. I'm really excited to watch this year. I will be catching a few games of the World Junior A Championship. That's very local to me right now. So I'm gonna go catch a few games there. Tickets are really cheap too. So I'll do some pre-scouting for us for next year.
Perfect.
And I know that there's another writer with the Hockey Writers that is actually credentialed there. So if you want to catch any of the information there, go to thehockeywriters.com. Treg Wilson. It's either Treg Wilson or Blaine Potvin. I'm sorry, whichever one of you it is not for throwing you in there. I believe it's Treg though. So go check that out. Last thing we're going to talk about today is Drake Batherson. Now he has been doing pretty good as of late in terms of point totals. On a pretty good 17 game stretch or so. Doing fantastic. Not much to complain about other than some defensive efforts. Bruce Garriock mentioned a few weeks ago that teams are calling on him, seeing if he's available. Now, he's a high-scoring winger, making $4.95 million. Of course, people are going to call and ask if he's available. But should he be? Dayton, I know that you have some thoughts on this. We'll start with you.
Okay. Yes. Last week, I published an article about this very concept.
Yep.
And the Garriock article that you mentioned and referenced said that teams are calling and the Senators had no interest in trading Batherson. I think that's a mistake. I think that the Senators have 3 untouchables. That's it.
Yep.
Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, Jake Sanderson.
Yep.
Everyone else can be sold for the right price.
Yep.
Now, Batherson, I think, is one of the more interesting options because he is having a bit of a resurgence after a terrible defensive year last year.
Yeah. And
looking a bit more like what he did when he was an all-star for a brief moment. And his contract is rather affordable, 4.95.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's locked in for a couple of years as well. So that gives a lot of other teams some ideas that, well, maybe we could afford this guy in a world where everyone is cap strapped.
Yep.
If teams are calling, I think the Senators should start, putting some feelers out. Okay, what will you give us for Batherson? I'm not saying that they have to trade him. I think trading him at this point would be a mistake. But also, it would be a mistake to completely ignore any trade requests because there's a chance you could get a haul for this guy.
Yep.
And what my article boiled down to and what my argument boils down to is this team, as it stands right now, is not good enough to make the playoffs.
Yep.
It can't. You need a different coach, as Simmer mentioned a few weeks ago.
Yep.
And I think you need to shift up some of the top 6.
Yep.
Because they've constructed their roster to win now, but they're not winning now.
Yeah.
And I think I don't think it's very controversial to say the Senators aren't making the playoffs this year, which is better than they have, but I don't think it's enough to make the playoffs.
Yep.
So Tarasenko is gone. Like, there's no way that they can either afford to keep him or convince him to stay around long term.
Yeah.
Giroux won't be around for much longer. He's only on a 3-year deal or 2-year deal now. And that's 2 guys in the top 6. Who fills out from the rest of the roster? I don't think anybody. Maybe Greg, maybe Pinto. Those guys are more third liners at this moment, though. Yeah. So if you flip Batherson, maybe you get 2 solid guys or some really good assets.
Yep.
There's a lot of possibilities with Batherson that no one else brings to the table. Shabbat, another guy that could be moved, but his contract is ugly at this time in this league.
Yep.
For the Senators, it's not the worst. But yeah, he's a guy that's worth exploring. I don't think worth trading right now. Maybe at the deadline or maybe in the offseason you take a look. But to completely ignore any trade requests is more mistakes by a plan that's just not working.
Yep. So I look at now, I know that Drake Batherson is not the same player. I don't think that they're too far off. But I look at the Pierre-Luc Dubois to LA trade as a pretty good shell for Drake Batherson trade. So Winnipeg was not interested in rebuilding. They traded Pierre-Luc Dubois along with an 8x8 extension, I believe it was. And they got a really good haul in return. They got Alex Iafallo, who has 16 points in 26 games. He's doing really well. Gabriel Velarde, who's missed some time, and Rasmus Kupari, who's a great 4th-line center and a 4th-round pick. Now, Ottawa's not going to get quite that much, I don't think. But if you can get that shell of a trade, you get that veteran guy, which Ottawa desperately needs. You get that kind of young up-and-coming guy who has some potential and a pick. That's pretty good. Again, I don't think Ottawa gets quite that much, but that's a really good starting point. Another player that I have been kind of looking at and thinking, I wonder if a Batherson deal might work. It'll have to be pretty darn close to money in, money out. But what about Andrei Kuzmenko? I'd like to see Kuzmenko in Ottawa. Unfortunately, Ottawa could not sign him 2 years ago when he was coming over. Vancouver's listening to calls on him right now. Ottawa's not listening to calls on Batherson, but I wonder if there's a deal there. I think Vancouver would have to add a little bit because Manco's making 5.5 this year and next, and on a little bit of a dry spell this year, but he had a fantastic rookie year last year. I'd be interested in seeing what a deal involving him could look like.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I don't want to see it 1-for-1. I think Batherson brings more value than Kuzmenko at this time.
Yeah.
Especially with the contract stuff, but
and mostly just through the contract. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely an interesting name to consider.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's Kuzmenko got right now? 15 points, 25 games.
Yeah.
That's not bad for a dry spell.
Yeah.
Last year had 74 points, 39 goals. That's pretty solid.
And he was shooting an astronomically high percent. It was always going to come down.
Yeah.
But yeah. Paul, what do you think of any thought of a Batherson trade?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of points of view, I guess. One would be, hey, look, don't do anything rash. He's still developing, still coming into his own. Wait until he's reached full potential before you make any moves. Although I agree with Dayton, and I think you're making the same point, Jacob. Anything's for sale for the right price.
Exactly.
But that said, with respect to his potential, he's actually on track for 70 points this year.
Yep.
And he's probably, I remember earlier reports on him, they expected him to be a 65 to 80 point player. So, hey, you know what? Maybe he is at the potential right now. His contract's a steal. So you think you should get a haul for him. But then, I don't know, trade him for what? I mean, you guys have come up with a couple of names, but that's always the question, right? You can throw names out, but a whole bunch of moving pieces have to come into coming to the right place at the right time. So yeah, hey, why not? If you look at this team, I agree with Dayton. There's Tkachuk, Norris, Stützle, Sanderson. You might put Shibata as the untouchables, and then everybody else. You know what?
Yeah.
They're in play. That sounds bad because it sounds like, man, you're right back in a rebuild, but
Right. It has to be a hockey trade. You're not trading for picks and prospects.
yeah, you're playing them for a roster player. So yeah, all of those considerations, GM is going to have to work his way through. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to wrap things up for today. We talked about a lot of different things. So let us know your thoughts on all of our different topics, especially the Drake Batherson. What would you do in that situation? Personally, I want to see him stick around. Nova Scotian guy, have to have his back there. But yeah, let us know what you think. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.